Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from group 9, or last group, and now we are going to explain about four materials. First is the system of voice and differences between active and passive clause. Second, short passive and lexical restrictions. And the third, passive of intransitive actives and prepositional passives. And the last material is get passives, bare passives, and adjectival passives. I hope you can learn from this video and enjoy this video. The first material is the system of voice. A system of voice is one where the terms differ as to how the syntactic functions are aligned with semantic roles. So clauses have two kinds of terms, active and passive. Usually there are also formal differences either associated with the verb. Example, special inflection or auxiliaries, or associated with noun phrases. Example, special case marking or prepositions. And the general terms active and passive are based on the semantic role of the subject in clauses expressing actions. In clauses describing some deliberate action, the subject is normally aligned with the active participant, or become the actor in the active voice, and in the passive voice become the patient, or the passive participant. The next material is the differences between active and passive clause. You may have a look at the picture. There are the structures of the passive and the active clause. Actually, the structure is same, but the subject of the active appears in the passive as complement of the preposition by in a prepositional phrase, functioning as complement. You can see at the example, everyone saw the accident. If we change the sentence into passive clause, it becomes the accident was seen by everyone. So the subject in active clause, everyone, if we change it into the passive clause, it will be a complement. It will be a complement of the preposition by. And the direct object of the active appears as subject of the passive. Example, in the active voice, everyone saw the accident. The direct object is the accident. But in the passive clause, the direct object appears as subject of the passive voice. The accident was seen by everyone. Everyone in this sentence is a subject. And then the passive has auxiliary be, carrying the tense inflection and taking as complement a subjectless non-finite clause with a head in the past participle form. So in the passive clause, the predicate is the auxiliary be, which carry the tense inflection and take as complement a subjectless non-finite clause with a head in past participle form.
And the next is short passive. In almost all cases, the internalis complement is optional. The passive clauses with no internalis complement are called short passive. The ones discussed so far are called long passive. Short passive are actually much more frequent than long passive. They have an important function. They enable us to leave out something that would be obligatory in the active, namely a main clause subject. The example one is The active here are not grammatical, and the passive one are fine. First, the active one. Built the house in 1960. Damage your car. Know little about the cause of ALS. Made mistakes. And then the passive one. The house was built in 1960. Your car was damaged. Little is known about the cause of ALS. Mistakes were made. The passive version enables us to avoid saying anything about, first, who built the house. We may have no idea who it was, or it may not be relevant. And the second is, which employee of our accidentally damaged your car. There are liability issues. And the third is, who exactly is ignorant. Nobody knows the cause of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. And the fourth is, or who blundered. People don't always want to directly admit error. And then the next is lexical restriction. Most transitive active clauses have passive counterparts, but not all. Some exceptional verbs are either generally or in certain use inadmissible in passive. The example is, the Thorn boasts are great beach. Max likes tech. Jill has 3 wonderful kids. The jug holds 3 liters. And then a great beach is boasted by the Thorn. Tech is liked by Max. 3 wonderful kids are had by Jill. 3 liters are held by the jug. And then boast and lack occur only in active clauses, and have occur in passive construction and its dynamic sense, as in she was happy to find there was both water and gas to be had. And hold occurs in passive, like it was held in place by duct tape, but not where it means contain.
Okay guys, I know that you have already familiar with passive form of transitive active which has only one object. But as English learner, we often find a sentence which has 2 objects, namely direct objects and indirect objects, and how to change this kind of sentence into the passive form. So here I'm going to explain about passive of the transitive actives. The transitive clauses have 2 objects. Usually the passive of the transitive has a subject corresponding to the first one, namely the indirect object. In the slide, here we are provided with 6 examples. For the left side is the active one, and on the right side is the passive one. For the first example, the boss gave me the key. The object in the sentence is me and the key. So how to change the sentence into the passive? We can see the passive form in the right side. I was given the key by the boss. The second example, the boss gave me the key, and the passive form is the key was given me by the boss. The third example, the boss gave the key to me, and the passive form is the key was given to me by the boss. Do you get the structure? Okay, next, prepositional passives. The subject of a passive may correspond to an object of preposition rather than of the verb. And here we also provided with 6 examples. The first example is people are looking into the matter. So how to change this kind of sentence, the sentence which contains preposition, into the passive form? So we can see on the right side. The passive form from the sentence is the matter is being looked into. And the B, they took advantage of us. The passive form is we were taken advantage of. The third example, someone has slept in this bed. The passive form is this bed has been slept in. In the right side, the examples that are the underlined preposition is trained. No actual complement follows it, but an understood complement is retrievable. And what we meant by doubly underlined is the word into, of, and in. For the prepositional passive is divided into 2, namely specific preposition and unspecific preposition. Specific preposition. In the example before, the preposition is specified by the preceding verb or verbal idiom, such as looked into, advantage of, slept in, and so forth. But some occurs and lost patience with don't permit prepositional passive, like what have been stated in the example below. A. We came across some old letter. And the second example is he lost patience with the children. The next is unspecified preposition. In the sentence, someone has slept in this bed. The preposition is not specified. Why? Because it has its ordinary meaning and in the active can be replaced by other preposition, such as under, on, near. For the example is someone has slept under, on, near this bed. And for the passive of this type are admissible only if the clause describes some significant effect on the subject referent or some significant property of it. And in this slide we are provided with 2 examples. The first is this bed has been slept in. The sentence is acceptable because sleeping in a bed affects it. The second example is Nauru can be driven around in about half an hour. The sentence is acceptable because if you can drive around a country in 2 hours, it is very small and that's a significant property. On the other hand, the bed was set near is not acceptable. Sitting near the bed wouldn't affect it and doesn't suggest any significant property of it. The next is get passive. The passive clauses considered so far have the auxiliary be. We can call them be passive. But there is also a passive with get instead of be. We can call them get passive. And here in the slide, we are provided with these examples. The left side is be passive and on the right side is get passive. For the first example, Pat was bitten by a snake. The get passive is Pat got bitten by a snake. So the word was is replaced with got. The next, they weren't charged until later. And the get passive form is they didn't got charged until later. She was elected mayor in 1990 and the get passive form is she got elected mayor in 1990. The next is several shots were heard. So from these examples, we can conclude that be is an auxiliary verb, but get isn't. Get passives require the dummy auxiliary do in the negative sentence. Get passives are a mark of informal style. So when you are in the school or office, you had better use be passive rather than get passive. The next is they are used for describing situation where the subject event is involved. In bringing the situation about or where there is an adverse or beneficial effect on the subject event, as in the second and the third example. The next is if no such factor is present, as with the inanimate subject in the fourth example, only the be passive is acceptable. So for the fourth example, several shots were heard. So the sentence we only can use be passive instead of get passive, because get passive in this kind of sentence is unacceptable. The next is pair passive. Past participle clauses also occur elsewhere with passive interpretation, and we call this pair passive because they lacked the be and get markers. They can be either complements or modifier. Therefore, pair passive is divided into two, namely pair passive as complement and pair passive as modifier. The first one is pair passive as complement in complex case native. The verb include have, get, in a different use from that of get passive, order, and certain sense verb such as see. And for pair passive as complement, we are provided with 4 examples. The first is we had the document checked by a lawyer. The second is you should get yourself vaccinated against measles. The third is she ordered that records destroyed. The fourth is he saw his son knocked down by a bus. So from these examples we can see that checked by a lawyer is the complement from the documents. Vaccinated against measles is the complement for yourself and suffered, and that will be meant by complement. Pair passive as complement. The next is pair passive as modifier. As modifier, pair passive function in the structure of noun phrase. For this, we are provided with 2 examples. The first is we want a house built after 1990. So here, the passive is built after 1990, which modify a house. And in the second example, we have the complaint made by her lawyer is being investigated. And the passive form here is made by her lawyer, which modify the complaint. The adjective of passive. Be can followed by an adjective, and sometimes an adjective is formed from the passive participle of a verb. This case must be distinguished from the be passive. We provided with 2 examples here. The first is her leg was broken, and the second is they were married. As a passive clause, A describes an event, as in her leg was broken in hockey accident, but it can also be a complex intransitive clause, an intransitive clause containing a predicative complement. And what we meant by predicative complement here is a complement which refers to the subject. As in her leg was sore, so the sentence her leg was sore is the another example. And in this interpretation, A describes a state resulting from an earlier event. She was using crutches because her leg was broken. Here we say that broken, not the whole clause, is an adjective or passive. The be passive reading of the example B also involves an event, as in they were married in the college couple, but the complex intransitive interpretation describes a state resulting from a prior event, as in they were still happily married. The key syntactic difference between the construction is that the adjectival passive can occur with complex intransitive verbs other than be. For example, her leg felt broken. They stayed married. Here, broken and married have only their adjectival state interpretation.